Your neighbor is somebody who you think it isn't. In fact, your neighbor is somebody who you hope it isn't.
I don't know whether you're aware of this, but the number of people that are on the streets is increasing at an exponential rate. I mean, it's absolutely incredible what's happening in this country.
Restructuring can't really start until we begin to see our neighbors from Jesus' point of view.
Would you feed me? I need a place to lay my head. Would you take me in? I am cold. Would you clothe me? I'm in a prison. Would you free me? I'm not a nobody. I'm not invisible. Help me find my way. Could you spare a little hope today?
Welcome to Invisible Neighbors. This very first session you're going to do is called Who is My Neighbor? You know, Jesus said, you got a lot of rules that you live with. I'm going to make it simple for you. There's just two. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. Love your neighbor as yourself. Sounds good, but do we ever stop to think who our neighbors really are? We start this session one with a story about an encounter that happens at a traffic light. If you haven't seen somebody at a traffic light or a stop sign holding a cardboard sign, you haven't been out of the house for the last 20 years. What do you do when you see them? Talks a lot about how you feel about neighbors, or even whether you would consider someone like this to be your neighbor.
It was Thursday afternoon, and I was heading home early from work. Traffic on the interstate was unusually light. With the window down and the radio up, a warm breeze and some Miles Davis jazz were doing their part to distance me from another crazy day at the office. My Lexus departed the 6th lane and rolled to the bottom of the off-ramp, just as the light at Blue Creek Road turned red. I lowered the volume on the radio. At that instant, peripheral vision prepared me for an unscheduled appointment. I looked to the left and our eyes met. He was likely in his 40s, but the haggard face between a matted beard and tattered cap made him appear much older. Even if I closed my window, my sunroof was fully open. An exchange of some kind with this homeless man was inevitable.
I was on BART the other day in San Francisco, the Bay Area Rapid Transit, and it's just amazing how many people cut themselves out of communication by plugging in with earphones, headphones, watching a movie going on their iPad. They pay no attention to who comes and goes, who sits beside them.
Gorgeous day. His voice revealed his age and confirmed my suspicions. Sure is, seemed like the natural reply. Hot though, were his next words, as he did an obligatory scan of the cloudless sky. Yes, indeed. A glance in my rearview mirror told me I would likely be his sole audience for the next 30 seconds or so. Heading home, he asked, moving closer to the curb. I am, kept our two-word volley in play. I tried to read his crude cardboard sign, but he was holding it off to the side at an awkward angle. This guy definitely needed a refresher class in roadside sales. The signal would soon be green and I'd be gone, expecting a pitch to come next. I scanned the console for quarters. Instead, he caught me off guard with a personal question. So what part of town you from? Never breaking eye contact, he squatted down, took off his hat and wiped his forehead with a torn flannel sleeve. He seemed more interested in conversation than my loose change. I live in the Peregrine Hills area, I countered hesitantly, not wanting to be too specific. His eyes widened and a broad smile rearranged the numerous wrinkles in his face. Hey, we're neighbors. I live up behind you there on Pinion Ridge. I tried to think of what houses were on Pinion Ridge. My internal GPS was only displaying boulders and bushes. Maybe I'll see you around sometime, he said, like we were old college friends running into each other at a downtown coffee shop. The name's Charlie. Long, sullied nails pierced the air for the calloused fingers that followed. I leaned out and shook his extended hand. Do you need a ride home? Those 6 words hit me like barbs from a taser. Who would ask such a reckless question?
Jesus was a great storyteller, and all of his stories had powerful impact to those who were around him. When he told the story of the Good Samaritan, the implications of that were just astounding. Jesus was telling the lawyer who asked the question that your neighbor is somebody who you think it isn't. In fact, your neighbor is somebody who you hope it isn't. And what you do to that person, for that person, makes all the difference in the world.
I turned to the passenger seat to find someone to blame. It held only my tightly zipped computer bag. If you don't mind, that would be great, Charlie answered tentatively, equally surprised by my offer. More at ease, he added. It'll take me an hour if I walk. And besides, things are pretty slow out here today. Muttering a prayer for protection, I moved my laptop to the back seat and unlocked the front passenger door. Charlie climbed in and clicked his seatbelt right as the light turned green. Over the next few miles, I learned that my neighbor, Charlie Goodall, grew up in Ohio, raised by an abusive elderly aunt and a rebellious older sister. Suspended from high school in the 11th grade, he never re-engaged with formal education. Since then, Charlie had lived in 12 states and held twice that number of jobs. Working as a Texas ranch hand was his favorite gig, but occasional stiff knees and regular stiff drinks had limited his current options.
We have a group of people in Washington who bail out Wall Street but don't bail out Main Street. And so a lot of middle-class people are slipping between the cracks. The homeless used to be drunks and drug addicts and ne'er-do-wells. You have people now with college degrees. They walk down the street, you meet them, they're nicely dressed, you can't believe they're homeless.
With Pinion Ridge clearly in view, I asked Charlie where exactly he lived. Me and a few guys got a place yonder. The bill of his cap jerked to the west. I looked over at the rugged terrain and pulled to the shoulder. Do you have blankets, I asked, knowing how cold it got in the upland at night. Yeah, we do fine, as good as all the others. What others, was my question, one that pushed open a heavy door I didn't know was there. Charlie went on to tell me that he knew of at least 3 dozen homeless people living within a few miles of my house. A bunch in the hills, some in culverts, a few in cars. He told me about someone named Chipshot, who had managed to spend most of the summer sleeping in various crannies around the country club. He even worked himself in as a caddy on a few occasions. His status cleverly concealed from the duffers whose bags he toted. I sat earnestly reflecting on my familiar surrounding. I've never seen any of these people. That's because you're not looking, responded Charlie with an element of scorn. We live right here among you, but you go about in your bubble as if we didn't exist. We don't commute to work with you. We don't shop in your stores. We never make your dinner party guest list. We don't feel welcome in your churches. But we're still here. We're your neighbors, and we're growing in number.
I like what Dr. Martin Luther King said in a speech he gave in New York City decades and decades ago. If I stop to help, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to be sucked into this situation? Am I going to be abused? Dr. King says we have to reverse that. We need to look at that and say, if I don't stop to help, what's going to happen to him?
After a few seconds of silence, Charlie thanked me for the ride and got out. As I watched him stumble across the road and mount the steep path, I thought about my Christian faith and Jesus' instructions, both in light of this freshly concluded conversation. Charlie! I got out and trotted his direction. As I drew near, that same voice that had asked Charlie if he wanted a ride spoke again. This time, I recognized it. We live at 4410 Kit Ridge Court. My wife and I talked about doing some barbecuing on the backyard grill tomorrow night. Charlie finger-combed his beard, waiting for my next words. There'll be plenty, Charlie. Can you join us?
Restructuring, the kind that Dr. King talked about, can't really start until we begin to see our neighbors from Jesus' point of view. Take a look around. You might be surprised what you see.
I need more than just a pocket full of change. Will you spare a little hope today?
This first session, what I hope you are left with is perspective. Who is it around you that is in need? Maybe you would say initially, No, nobody. Occasionally I'll run into somebody. But we're saying, look a little deeper, probably closer than you think. And then also in this session, how much time are you devoting to those who would be invisible neighbors? Is your life full tilt on the busy schedule? Can you back it down a little bit? Should you back it down a little bit? I think the answer is yes. Take a look at what Jesus says on who is my neighbor and how we're supposed to treat those people.